The Film Crickets are intended for mature audiences. Any guests on the Film Crickets do not necessarily share the same opinions as the Film Crickets.
Film Crickets, chirping about movies.
It's time for the Film Crickets with Jay Fortier, Chris Martineau, and Melanie Howerton. On this week's episode, the Film Crickets review the 1990 American submarine spy thriller film, The Hunt for Red October.
You wish to add something to our discussion?
Oh, come on. You're just an analyst. What can you possibly know what goes on in this mind?
Does it stand the test of time? Let's find out. Your Film Crickets are on now.
All right, welcome everybody to the Film Crickets. My name is Jay Fortier, and I am along with my good friend and co-host Chris Martineau.
Hello, what's happening?
Doing all right, man.
All right.
We also are welcomed by... we welcomed her. Well, wait, hold on. Let's start this again.
Yeah.
And also, I'd like to welcome my good friend and co-host, Melanie Howerton. How you doing, Melanie?
Good. How you guys doing today?
Super.
Good.
I dug trenches all day. That was my Sunday.
Why?
Yeah. My wife has grand plans for the front yard, and I am on board for those plans. I am not a planner. I am the muscle. So she does the finesse, and I do the big work. So if you need something lifted or dug or deconstructed, or that's my job. And then hers is like, oh, I need this color here and this color here. But she digs. Don't get me wrong, folks. She is in there doing hard labor. So it's not one of those, but yeah. So that's our stylistic approach. So I've been doing that today. I'm a little sore. That's why I have an extra bit of glass of courage in order to get through the old pod. But I'm glad to be here to talk to you guys about The Hunt for Red October. So, a couple of weeks ago we were talking about, what movie we're going to watch. And I think I had just seen League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which is such a piece of garbage movie. Oh God, it's a mess. And I was kind of on this. I've been listening to this podcast and going into the works of John McTiernan. And I just rewatched Predator, which is awesome, and Die Hard. And I'm like, hey, Hunt for Red October was a big movie back in the day. I've only seen it. Well, I have a story about my experience with this movie. So I'm like, let's talk about Hunt for Red October. Before we talk about Hunt for Red October, who here has seen Predator 2?
Me.
I know I have. I just can't remember it for the life of me right now, but I know I have.
What a piece of shit movie that is. Oh my God. Jason, your take on Predator 2?
I don't remember specifics other than I liked the fact that it was in the city more than the jungle. I actually kind of dug that. I don't know. I'm more, and this probably sounds like I'm weird, but I like movies that take place where I'm more familiar, as far as I'm not familiar with Los Angeles.
You're not familiar with the Costa Rican jungles?
No, but what I'm saying is I'll even go on a totally different direction and say I prefer like how Ace Ventura 1 was in Miami, and then I hated how they went to Africa or wherever the hell they went. The second one, I was like, this is stupid. I just it's not always relatable. Because I can't relate to that. I'm not saying that I liked it better than part one. I'm not saying that. I don't want anybody to think that.
Oh God, it's such a piece of shit.
But I really like the idea of it being hidden, on the side of a building.
Okay.
And stuff like that. That premise is cool.
The reason I bring it up, and Melanie, you've seen Predator, and you've seen Die Hard.
Yes.
Right. So John McTiernan in his heyday is, I'm not saying he's Stanley Kubrick, but the way he can craft a story that even if, regardless of whether you think the story is interesting, he can craft a story from point A to point B to point C and all of it makes sense. From the beginning. Die Hard has so many aspects of shit you see at the beginning comes back at the end. And Predator is a very classic piece of storytelling, and Hunt for Red October is too. Whether you think it's interesting or not, I'm getting a vibe maybe that some of us think it was a little boring, and I might be in that camp too. But Predator is, for an action movie, is absolutely this very fine bit of storytelling, which has a definitive beginning, middle, and end, and it surprises the audience and it keeps you along. And Predator 2 is a piece, it's just exploitation right out of the gate. It's just brown people doing racist things and nudity and gore, and it's crazy. So I'm going to put my hat, we have this on record. I am putting my hat in the ring for doing a side-by-side of Predator 2. Both of them are 80s movies, and I think we should watch them and compare and contrast.
Creature double feature.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Predator 2. Having said that...
Wait. Okay, go ahead. But let me finish after you. Go ahead.
No, I'm in a segue, so go ahead.
Well, he said creature double feature, so I have always wanted to do, since we did Night of the Comet, Night of the Creeps, I would like to do The Stuff in the Blob.
Sure. Oh, The Stuff is a great satire movie.
Yeah.
I've never seen this stuff.
I have not seen this movie since the 1980s, and I do remember there's a character played by Garrett Morris named Chocolate Chip Charlie.
Okay.
I don't remember that.
Chocolate Chip Charlie. Well, it's alliteration.
He was like a spokesman for a chocolate chip cookie or something like that.
All right. Well,
I also want to do The Ref, because
The Ref is great.
I always loved that movie, and I read a couple of the comments that a viewer had asked us to do that, and I've always loved that movie, so I would love to do that.
The Ref is great.
Yeah.
We can dive into the awkwardness of Kevin Spacey, unfortunately, and Dennis Leary is so goddamn good in that movie.
Awesome.
This is a great moment here for me to jump into something, a segue here. Last time you had said something about, hey guys, to the audience, let us know if you want us to do something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody wrote on our YouTube comment, complimenting us, and then said, put that thing you do in your queue. And I said, okay.
We did it.
So I'm instantly, but that made me think that there are people probably who watch us on YouTube that have no idea that we have a larger catalog in audio. So if you go over to Spotify and check out our podcast over there's a lot more episodes. Like we did episodes that we just don't have on video.
Yep.
Like Beverly Hills Cop. I mean, there's a ton. There's a lot of different episodes that we did. So feel free to check that out. I think a lot of variety. There was a lot of episodes we did prior to jumping over to straight video.
Yep, no doubt.
Both,
so,
I should say.
Yeah.
So.
And I know you didn't do The Ref. I know that for sure.
Yeah.
No,
I know you didn't do The Stuff in the Blob, so we got to do those. And then
I'm into that.
We're thinking that they want us to do.
Cool.
All right,
yeah, let us know.
Let's go over the history.
All right, so hey, Hunt for Red October. So we're going to talk about this movie. And again, I'm pretty sure. Well, let's see how we all feel about it. But before we get into it, I want to know your history with the Hunt for Red October. Have you seen it? Did you see it in the theater? Did you watch it on video? Did you rent it? Jay, what's your history with the Hunt for Red October?
Less than 24 hours old.
Okay.
I've never
no desire to see it back in the day?
No. You know what? War movies don't always lure me in.
It's not a war movie.
You know what I mean? Like military, submarine, Cold War, whatever you want to call
politics, espionage, and diplomacy.
Okay. But I once was dragged to see Crimson Tide. I was, whatever.
I don't know that I ever saw that one. Okay.
Okay.
All right. That's your history.
Submarine movie. All right.
So
it's never on my radar. I began it maybe like a year ago, and I was like, meh, and left it. And let me tell you something right now. If I had been dragged to the theater, I would have been able to finish the whole thing, obviously.
Yep.
Or because of this podcast, I was able to finish it. But had I started this last night and was not attached to this podcast to do it, I would have bailed.
Really? Okay.
I was bored.
That's your take on it. We just want to know your history.
All right. No, I just want to say I'm not saying it didn't get interesting at times, later, but it took well over a half hour.
Sure.
It was a slow burn, and I was not in the mood for a slow burn.
Fair enough. Before I get to Melanie, what's your, again, and this is going to be one of the themes I bring up, did your father care about this movie?
I don't know.
Don't know. Okay. Never talked about it.
No.
Did your dad read books about war?
No.
No, not his thing. Okay.
No.
All right. Just wondering. Melanie, what's your deal?
Pretty sure I saw this in the movies because I went to the movies a lot when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty sure I saw this in the movies. And I know it was like a big thing when it came out.
It was.
I don't know, I'm just kind of going to follow what Jay said. He had never seen it, but I saw it, and I remember really liking it, and it really had my attention. I thought it was super interesting.
Yep.
Now, when you're younger, you would think that things like this would be more boring, and then when you get older, you might appreciate it more. It was the exact opposite.
Nice.
Sure. I don't understand that. I just don't. But yeah, I did. I think originally I saw it in the movies.
Okay, cool.
No, wait, hold on. When you said exactly, so now you found it a little more boring than when you were younger. All right, just making sure.
Which is weird. I still enjoyed it. I liked it. I thought it was like, this is intense. And I think I still had it in the back of my mind, like, this is a really good movie. It's going to be intense. And I made my husband watch it. But I did kind of feel like it was pretty slow.
Interesting.
And what did you think?
Yeah.
I don't know. I usually he tells me, but he just didn't really say that much at all when we were watching it. So I don't know.
So wait a minute.
He still thinks he's watching it.
Yeah.
It put him in a coma.
Put him slipped in a coma.
I know he was laying on the floor with a pillow, so hopefully he saw the whole thing. I don't know.
Question though, you said intense?
Yeah, I
so
thought it was.
So is it still intense but boring?
I don't know. I don't know.
Interesting.
Having to know it was like a serious thing and I had to pay attention and I knew that there was a twist in it. I didn't remember that the whole point of it was because he was gonna like what do you call that?
Defect.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then
not only
I was
defect,
trying to
but
read what it was about and I saw that I'm like, shit, I wish I didn't read that because it would have been more of a surprise.
Not only defect, but defect with a hundreds of millions of dollars worth of Soviet property and a nuclear reactor. Not something you want slipping into enemy hands. So,
and I like Alec Baldwin, and I like Sean Connery.
Alec Baldwin.
So,
all right. So my history with this movie is I know I saw it in the theater because everybody else did. I think I remember liking it. I think I remember going. It was intense, but it's not like there was a lot of explosions and like Jedi and like flipazoids or heavy machine gun fire. We're coming out of Predator. We're coming out of Rambo. We're coming out of First Blood. So you're expecting that. You don't get it. And I remember thinking, like, man, this is really, quote, I think I remember thinking it was action-packed. Because I'd had my interest the whole time. And it was in a world that I didn't understand. I didn't understand how the government worked, how diplomacy worked, how all of this other stuff worked, because I wasn't in the military, nor was I going to be. So anyway, but, long story short, saw in the movie, I thought it was okay. Then I got a sinking feeling of dread with this, because my father was in the Navy in the sub, and he would watch this movie on loop over and over again, and it got really kind of aggravating. So this movie, Heartbreak Ridge, Predator, another McTiernan movie, Das Boot, a movie about German submarines, and The Karate Kid. Just kept watching them over and over and over again, and after a while I started to resent Hunt for Red October. Yes, Jason?
No, I pointed to my poster.
Oh, yes. Oh, Karate Kid, yeah. I know, but you know what? When you've seen him say, it's coming around, and, my dad rewinding to that scene over and over again.
You said God. Karate Kid, and I
anyway.
That's all.
Yeah,
I wasn't trying to get you to like it or anything or whatever.
No, it's fine. So it's not like that talking about Top Gun. So the bottom line here is that I kind of grew to avoid this movie at all costs. And then once this started to come up, and I recently rewatched Predator, and it's awesome. And I watched Die Hard, and it's awesome. And I've been trying to watch some of John McTiernan's movies. I'm like, here's Hunt for Red October. It was a big hit. Let's rewatch it. So that's why I brought up Hunt for Red October. And I just wanted to see what the deal was. I think this is a classic example of something maybe or maybe not holding up, even though it was a huge hit back in the day. And there's nothing about this movie that doesn't hold up in terms of it being, racially insensitive, sex role insensitive. It's none of that. It's a PG movie. So does it hold up? So let's talk about it. Let's do the rundown. Hunt for Red October came out in 1990. It's rated PG. Comes in at 2 hours and 15 minutes. In November 1984, the Soviet Union's best submarine captain violates orders and heads for the U.S. in a new undetectable sub. The American CIA and military must quickly determine, is he trying to defect or to start a war? Directed by John McTiernan, written by, in case you hadn't figured it out, Tom Clancy. It's the most Tom Clancyest movie ever. Larry Ferguson, Donald L. Stewart, starring Sean Connery, Alec Baldwin, Scott Glenn, who is fantastic in this movie. Love Scott Glenn, Sam Neill, James Earl Jones, Joss Auckland, and Tim Curry, and Stellan Skateboard.
Yeah,
Stellan Skateboard. I mean, Skarsgård is in this, and Jeffrey Jones also in the film, and that is the rundown of the hunt for Red October.
By the way,
Jay,
a reunion for Jeffrey Jones and Alec Baldwin.
True. Yeah, Beetlejuice.
They were in,
Beetlejuice. Yeah.
Beetlejuice.
I wrote that down. And it's funny, in my notes, I usually take a shit ton of notes. Sorry, but I do. No. And I literally, the only thing that I wrote in there was the Beetlejuice. And then I wrote, they would never just start talking English to each other. Like, never.
What are you talking about?
No, I think they weren't talking English. I think they were doing this for our sake. Mm-hmm. I think they moved in on the camera and then said, okay, we're going to spare you from having to read the rest of the film.
Because, like, everything was reading, but then they started talking English, and I'm like...
I know.
I think they just transferred. Do that. Like, they would just never do that.
So they did a push-in when the Russians or the Soviets were talking. They did a push-in, and then they transfer on the word Armageddon, which is the same in Russian as it is in English. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then they pull out, and everybody's in English. Now, what's funny is you have Sean Connery speaking Russian in his Sean Connery accent, which is absolutely hysterical. But again, John McTiernan, when he was directing the movie, he wanted Sean Connery and said, don't worry about it. Don't try. Don't even try to do Russian. Just do your accent, and eventually, people will just buy it. And we kind of do, or we don't care.
Yeah.
Did you care?
No.
Well, no,
nobody
because
care.
Obviously they even said that he actually wasn't Russian. So he probably didn't need to do that anyway. I mean, they said that he wasn't Russian.
Right. So look, this is let's get our take on this. This is the daddiest dad movie to ever dad a dad movie. I mean, this is white middle-aged dudes that just came in from mowing the lawn and want to watch a movie. Like, this is such a dad film. Were there any women in this movie? Any?
I don't know.
Barely.
Was there?
None. A wife, and we had we had a deceased. Oh yeah, and a little girl, and we had a deceased wife. In terms of Sean Connery, so this is all. So it's a thriller, quote unquote, right? It's an espionage thriller, and what we see is this political problem unfolding, and we get to witness it as people from every aspect of American and Soviet government. Mm-hmm. So we're seeing it from inside. Jesus Christ, we see it at one point not only from inside the submarines, the nuclear submarines, but we see it from in the Situation Room in the underbelly of the White House to where we see the National Security Advisor, which is the next step over from the President of the United States, not in terms of power, but in terms of advising, right? The NSA guy is going to inform the president on what they're going to do. All the way down to the shipyard where they're building the ship. So we see every tier, to the military people, to the military analysts, to all that stuff. And we get to see all of that unfolding in front of us. And we get to see the diplomats, too. At one point, we see the diplomats, the American and the Soviet diplomats, kind of like getting into it with each other without, saying too much, without saying anything too incendiary to start a war, but saying a war might start. So the roles of the diplomats in order to make sure they're keeping the peace, but letting them know we're watching you. Yeah, well, we're watching you. Yeah, well, we're watching you. Yeah, well, we're watching you more. Like, that's all of what diplomacy is. So, bottom line, does that make it any more interesting? I go to Jay. The fact that we're looking at every aspect of espionage, diplomacy, and the military infrastructure, does that make it more interesting?
No.
Why not?
No, it's just, you know what? I always feel a little stupid when I talk like this.
Just say it.
No. When I say it was so wordy, right?
Yeah.
And what I mean is, like, they're just going on and on and on about this, that, and the other, and it's not like elevated.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, all right, listen, I'm going to go back to Warrior for a second. We watched the movie Warrior recently.
Amazing,
And the beginning, though, is kind of mellow, right? Like, when Nick Nolte is, you first see Nick Nolte, and then you see him meet Tom Hardy.
Yep.
They're both kind of just talking like this for a little while. But what they're saying has a lot of impact. Like, like when he says, like, well, it looks like, it's probably hard to find a girl that can take a punch these days. Like he's saying it, like, you know what I mean? That's really got a lot of impact. He's talking about his dad. You know what I mean? Like, this was just like, it just kept, I don't know, like I said, slow burn, you know, and I'm probably insulting a shit ton of people out there that love this movie, but it's just, like I said, I prefer popcorn.
Okay.
You know, and
well, I know that I prefer popcorn too. I like a big greasy cheeseburger as well, but like
this just
I guess I'm
going on and on and on. Like,
okay.
It did get interesting, like I said, after like 30 plus minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But my problem is I wouldn't have made it that long if I didn't have to.
Okay.
And like, you know, later on when they're doing stuff like, you know, hurry up and turn at the right time, and he's saying wait another. That's intense. You know, like
sure.
Melanie said, intense. I think it gets intense at those moments because he's navigating, like, you know, all these rocky areas and stuff like that. So
they're navigating. Cool. They're navigating by calculating in their heads.
Right. No, so that's cool. But I'm just saying, like, I just didn't care. Like, to get to that point. At that point, I cared. But I'm saying I didn't care to get to that point.
All right, Melanie.
I would have bailed a while ago.
Yeah, sure. Melanie, what's your deal? So here I've laid out this framework of, we're looking at, these people are under intense amounts of pressure from the highest echelon of government down to, like I said, the dock workers building the submarines. Yeah. We're seeing all of it unfolding and how all of it's interconnected. And that all of it is in a chess match to try to figure out what the Soviets are doing. The Soviets are trying to figure out what we're doing, and no one can really talk to each other. And if they are, they're doing it in some weird diplomatic voice. Does that make it interesting?
No, and I think to me what made it interesting, I mean, usually when you said that, it actually made me think of another movie, which was Contagion, which I'd like to do because that was one movie where you were seeing you were seeing the reporters and seeing what they were going through. You were seeing the scientists and what they were going through. You were seeing the people who actually were sick and seeing what they were going through. Like, so you had family, like normal people, you had reporters, you had the science people, you had the report, like all these. So that was super interesting to see it that way. This movie kind of just didn't, I don't know, it doesn't matter. I think that the thing that made it more interesting, if you hadn't seen it before, was basically you really didn't know if he wanted to defect or not. And I think what made it the most interesting is seeing whether Alec Baldwin was right with his theory.
Yes.
Because if he wasn't, holy crap, what's going to happen now? You know, but like, so I think the most interesting part, honestly, was Alec Baldwin's part and him trying to put all the pieces together and then have somebody actually believe him and give him that chance to kind of prove that he's right. So I think that part was the most interesting or intense to me.
I agree, and what's interesting to me is this movie obviously is slow. I am not going to try to convince you that it's not a slow film. And I'm also, to me, it seems like the two quote-unquote action sequences they have almost are shoehorned in just because they needed to have them. Like the two submarines, when the October and the Dallas are like right next to each other, and they're trying to be quiet, or that one's right next to the other one, and then they have to veer off. That to me was almost it was necessary in the movie, but also unnecessary. We didn't actually need that in order to get to the end. And also the fact that we have at one point the Americans are on the October when we're in the defection stage, and no one knows where anybody is, and Sean Connery basically has surrendered this nuclear vessel to the Americans, saying, I want refuge, I want security from the United States, and then suddenly there's a man on board with a gun, like a loyalist is in there saying, I don't want to defect, and tries to shoot everybody. Yeah. That and at the same time, I think there's a Stellan Skarsgård is coming in with the Russian sub because they're trying to destroy the October because they figured out via a letter that they're going to defect and they're going to give the sub over to the United States. When I was watching the movie, because I watched it this morning early, I'm watching the movie going I got things to do. It's 8:00. Like, I hope I get the movie done by 8:00. So I'm looking at the runtime. And I noticed that last action scene where there's an active shooter in a submarine and there's another submarine firing torpedoes. I'm looking at the movie, there's 5 minutes left. And that scene only takes about 8. It's like, wow, you really shoved all of this action out of nowhere. Gunfire, in the middle, almost like they had to, because you didn't actually have to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Did you have to? Or could we have resolved? What's that? I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, is it pandering, or is it just like, well, we got to send him out of here with some gunplay? You know, I don't know. It was interesting.
I think what part I liked was when was it Sean Connery that handed Alec Baldwin a gun, or Alec Baldwin that handed Sean Connery a gun? But when I can't remember, but I thought that was like kind of a cool part because it really showed that he trusted.
Oh, sure.
And then the part
he gave it to the captain.
Yeah.
I think Captain gave it to Captain. So like Sean Connery gave it to
the other captain.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
Scott Glenn, right?
Yeah.
I can't remember his word gun, and I was doing that, and I thought that was nice because they're really showing trust. And then the other part that I felt sad for was the guy that was like, I really wanted to go to, what does he say, Wisconsin,
Montana.
Minnesota,
Sam
or
Neill.
something like.
Sam Neill, yeah, went to Montana.
Yeah, Montana. I was like, oh, that's sad.
Yeah,
but it was impactful to hear him say, "They let you go from state to state without papers."
I know, I liked that part. Yeah,
it's like that really shows you how bad they had it.
But let's look at Sean Connery. Let's look at his motivation. Right, he's not really Russian. He's Lithuanian, so he's in the Russian bloc, the Eastern Bloc of Russia, of the Soviet Union, and he knows that he's been a submarine captain forever. That's what gives him an advantage because he knows all the naval tactics, all the warfare tactics that they would throw at him because he's done them himself, and he knows that this submarine, what it's made for. It's a completely silent submarine made to sneak up onto the east coast of the United States and fire a bunch of nuclear weapons at the United States. And he feels like, well, I think his thing is, I don't think he thinks the sub should exist. I don't think anybody. Exactly. I think he thinks no one should have it.
Yeah.
But the fact that he's giving it up is kind of indicative of like, I don't want any part of this anymore. And he's also lost his wife. And so to him, he's got his family's gone. I don't know if he had any kids or whatever, but his family's gone. He has no actual ties to Mother Russia. He's Lithuanian. So why do I want to be a part of this? And so we have some sympathy for his defection and why he wants to defect. And again, 1984, height of the Cold War, a lot of this stuff was happening. We're just tired of all of this. We want to be done with communism. It came out in 90, but the movie takes place in 84.
Oh, I didn't see that.
It's just funny because like every 80 movie is always like, we have to fight the Russians. It's like always like every movie has a every I don't know movie, but every like generation or something has like, these are the bad guys that we're fighting. So now we're gonna make movies with them, in it.
Oh, sure.
I'm sure that has a lot to do with its the fact that everybody went to go see it.
Yeah. Well, but Melanie, to your point, I mean, Predator was in the jungle.
Yeah.
So people who are going to see it are like still remembering Vietnam.
Yeah.
If you remade Predator, it would be somewhere in the Middle East.
Yeah, totally, 100%.
Because that's what we're interested in.
Yeah. It went from like it's like you said, like oh my god, like that time of the war, and then to the Russian, and then it was the Middle East. It's like you can see the evolution of the movies that do that. Right. These are the bad guys now, and this is what we have to make movies all about. And then we're going to move on to these are the bad guys now. This is what we're going to make movies all about.
So wait a minute. Let me get to the point again. I'm not saying this movie's not boring.
Yeah.
Not saying that. I'm not saying I'm on board with this movie either. But what I am saying is, and I'm not trying to be all like film school nerd on this, right? But the fact of the matter is, we watch movies so that we can get a glimpse into what it's actually like to be in these situations that we don't want to be in, right? So that's part of seeing that. That's we want to be in the danger, but we don't want to be harmed. We want to see what it's like, but we don't want to be harmed. And so we want to see what it's like, in these violent situations, so we don't have to deal with it. And to me, what spoke to people that went to go see Hunt for Red October in droves was we were just coming out of the Cold War. It's 1990 when this comes out, so the Berlin Wall is down. Right? Russia is back to almost being Russia pretty soon anyway. And we want to see what the inner workings of the tension between the Soviet Union and the United States was at the time, dealing with diplomacy and dealing with defectors and dealing with how many, like, guys, did you get a sense of how many freaking submarines are out in the ocean?
No, it's crazy.
There's thousands of them just like around.
To think of that.
You know what I mean? And they've cataloged where all the features of the underwater is and where everybody is and where the fleets are at every time. And that's happening all the time. And we as people don't have access to that because we don't have clearance for that. But we know it's happening. So we'd like to know. Just like we would like to know. Oh, man. So one thing that spoke to me in the movie that I really dug was, and again, I geek out because, guys, in case I haven't said it before, what? I live near Washington. So I drive past all this shit all the time. Right? And I dig it. I get it. I still geek out on it 2 years later. Like, oh my God, that's that. Oh my God, I'm walking past this and I'm driving past this. And like, I geek out on the fact that there are people in these offices doing business that we don't know anything about. And their goal is, they have different jobs. And one of their goals as a CIA analyst is someone is going to call on you to advise a group of people on what to do based on your skill set. That is Jack Ryan. Jack Ryan's a CIA analyst. He's an ex-Navy man, or Marines, but he knows a lot about subs. And James Earl Jones, who works somewhere in the intelligence community, says to Jack Ryan, we're going they're in the belly of the White House. There's a scene where they go into the White House and they go in one of the advising rooms. And he says, yeah, we're gonna have a meeting with the National Security Advisor, and we're gonna make a presentation on what we should tell the president. And Jack Ryan basically says, well, who's gonna give the presentation? It's like, oh, you are. And what? And that's what you need to do. You step up at that moment, and you're in a role of advising the commander in chief on what to do in that moment. And I think all of us, at least in this area, again, in D.C., because everything's all connected with the government somehow, all of us wonder, like, what would that be like? Like, somebody is asking, I have to tell somebody who's going to tell somebody, and the president's going to make a decision based on me. And they're asking me to do this right now, no prep, because we don't have time for prep. Like, but the thing is, and I know, and I'm going to stop my point, what makes the movie boring is that you can't, if you're in this infrastructure, you can't overreact. You have to be calm. You have to be calculated. You have to be logical. You have to give the facts. And then somebody else decides what to do with the facts you just gave them. And that's horrifying. But that's what you need to do in that situation. And I can't imagine what that's like.
But there's been so many other movies that are like super serious, or people have to be so serious, but they are a little bit more intense and a little bit more interesting.
Sure.
And it's just crazy because I do remember, like I said, when you said, let's do this movie, I was thinking, okay, great. Because I remember it was like really good and I really liked it. It's just so odd how all three of us are now like, is it because now we don't have attention spans anymore because we're on the internet 47,000 times a day and flipping through different things? I mean, or there's just more interesting movies that have come out since then. I don't get it. I don't understand like why we felt like it was more interesting when we were younger, when it was such a serious movie, but now as we're older, we don't think it's as interesting anymore. It's just so odd.
I distinctly remember people saying it's an exciting movie. And I remember getting out of that movie going, man, that was exciting. And now I'm just like, wow, that was like a procedural. Like, I can't.
I mean, it kept your interest, but you were still like, this is a long movie. Do you know what I mean?
It kept your interest because all the acting was so goddamn good.
It was so good. And then, like, yeah, that's why.
You know what I mean? Like, you felt for Jack Ryan. Like, he felt like, I'm a fish out of water. Everyone gives me shit for just being an analyst and not being, like, in the, you know, a general or an admiral or whatever. But he still had the balls to try to do the thing. Or he had the balls to go on a hunch. Yeah. Because he knew it was a good hunch. You know? It's interesting. Like, for instance, at one point, Scott Glenn, they're trying to do it. They're doing Morse code between the two submarines. I mean, so what's Tom Clancy nonsense is this, by the way? The two subs are next to each other. But they're doing Morse code between each other. And if anybody else picks up on the Morse code, the whole game is gone.
Yeah.
Like, if once the word defect comes up in the Morse code, somebody's going to pick up on it and go, wait, what's happening? The cover is blown. And here's Scott Glenn on the periscope, looking in one direction. They have it set up to that Sean Connery is looking in the other direction in the screen. Yeah. So they're kind of looking at each other. But what I thought was interesting is that, you know, Jack Ryan, Alec Baldwin's writing down messages that he wants to get to Sean Connery. and and Scott Glenn is doing the Morse code through the periscope. Jack Ryan, and he says, is the captain of the Russian sub, is he the only one that's going to see this? And Scott Glenn goes, probably. And to me, that was such an interesting moment, because probably is not what you want to hear. What you want to hear is no, but he can't say that. He's got to tell him the facts. Whether you like it or not, I'm going to tell you what I think is happening, and the answer to that question is probably, which makes it all based on, oh my God, I hope nobody's looking at this time because we're all screwed if they do. Yeah. And to me, that's the tense. That's where the tension comes from, right? And that's why it's interesting then, because we'd never seen a movie like Hunt for Red October before. Mm-hmm. But now we've seen stuff like it. We've seen it over and over again. We've seen more interesting versions of it. Mm-hmm. Air Force One, get off my plane, We've seen like all this shit that they make it more interesting. But back in the day, you could sell a movie in 1990 just on this. And boy, dads ate this shit up. People that read Tom Clancy novels just ate this shit up. Man, I want to hear about Apollo-class submarines. I don't know. I don't think anybody does anymore. But whatever. So
let's do Final Judgment and find out.
Sure.
All right.
It's time now for Final Judgment. Are you ready to rubber stamp this bitch? Here's the Final Judgment.
All right. A lot of people in this movie received Final Judgment.
That's true.
Like Sam Neill's character.
Yeah, poor guy. Can I go first?
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Ready? I think it holds up. And because dads that liked it in 1990 are the same dads that like it now. Mm-hmm. I think this is just a dad movie for dudes that like to read books about submarines. And if you want to read a book about a submarine, you also want to watch a movie about a submarine, and you got the quintessential movie about a submarine. I think it holds up for that reason alone. They don't make movies like this anymore, probably for the reasons we've discussed. I think it kind of does, for the reason I just said. Dads then liked it. Dads now would like it, but only a select few dads.
I want to go next.
Go ahead, Melanie.
I'm going to say it doesn't hold up.
Okay.
Even though it was, $30 million for budget, $200.5 million gross. I think it doesn't hold up because they would never freaking hold the attention span of anybody today.
Sure. Unless
you had already seen it when you were younger and you loved it and you were really into that stuff and you loved the actors. Again, just like you said, certain people are going to like it. But if I was to show this to my kids, they would be like, oh my God. They would be on the phone the whole time. They would be like, when is it freaking ending? I don't want to watch this. It'll be almost like torture to them to watch it, which is crazy because I freaking loved this movie when I was younger. And I was so excited when you said you wanted to watch it.
Right.
But no, I think people just have too many things going on in their minds right now. And they're always flipping on Pinterest and Instagram and TikTok and whatever. I don't think that something like this would hold their interest. There's just not enough going on. Mm-hmm. I think you would have to have grown up with it. You would have to have liked it when you were younger and are just into that stuff. Maybe, I don't know. So I'm gonna say no. Mm-hmm. And while I'm still on the microphone, I just want to say, because I didn't do the trivia, the VHS tapes were red when they came out. And it cost $20,000 for Sean Connery's toupee.
There you go.
The ponytail. That's all I have. And then I guess Sean Connery and Alec Baldwin had a lot of training for this movie, military training, which was kind of cool, so they could kind of play the roles good. Mm-hmm. But no, as much as I loved this movie when I was younger, I just don't think the average person, if this came out in the movie theater today, and you had people go watch it from this generation, like the younger people, they would be like, it was good. Mm-hmm. Are they going to go back and see it again? Probably not. Are they going to watch it again later on? No, because you saw it once and it's kind of good enough. Are they going to recommend it to someone else? Probably not. So that's why I'm just going to say no, it doesn't hold up, even though I did like the movie, especially when I was younger. I just don't think it's going to hold up to the interest of people today as far as attention span.
Excellent. Jay.
Yeah, I'm with you, Melanie. I think it's I just think today's people would just be like I was last night. Like, if I didn't have to watch it. You know what I mean? Like, all right, I'm out.
Yep.
It just, like I said, it was extremely slow and very wordy and full of jargon that I couldn't have cared less about.
Jargon's a little rough.
Yeah, so like
jargon's
I was
rough.
like, whatever. Like, I just don't care. I don't mind jargon if they hurry up and get to what this jargon means. I can watch a movie about law, like a lawyer, right? And he's talking jargon, but then I instantly see the impact of what he says. I don't care about what case number or history that they're talking about. In this of this, like it doesn't matter to me. But like, I see what it does. I see the impact that it has. I could watch a movie about chess. I have no idea how to play chess. However, I can see by the reactions that everybody's making that movie was amazing. Right? Like, wow, what a surprise. Like, it did nothing for me, like, as far as, like, my witnessing of that, but, like, I see what it did, so I get it. So, you can still pull that off and not bore everybody. So, I would say, no, it doesn't.
Sure.
I think it's just crazy, honestly, though, because, I can't believe that I feel that way, and I always feel bad saying that something doesn't hold up when it was so beloved of a movie, and I liked it when I was younger,
I think things change. We've seen many movies between then and now.
Yeah.
So that was our show, everybody, and hope you enjoyed the hunt for Red October more than we did. Hopefully our show was more interesting. I don't want to make people feel bad for like us not thinking that it was that interesting. However, this is why we do what we do. It's all about seeing how things are today. So I'd like to thank Steve Lavoie for our vocal imaging and Draco and the Malfoys for our theme music. And on the behalf of Melanie and Chris, I'd like to thank you for joining us, and tune in next time. This is the Film Crickets. Until next time, movies may not age like fine wine, but we drink it anyway. Bye.
Sounds like what we think about the movie. Film crickets, chirping about movies. Chirping about, chirping about, chirping about, chirping, chirping, chirping about. Film crickets, chirping about movies.